We live in a country where politicians are more afraid of voters than voters are of politicians. That's how we want it. That feels filthier. That feels like a grosser part of rock and roll, but not what I think. And you know that.
Over to you, Chris.
Like, I don't know.
What if he's still around?
Cool story, comma, bro.
Welcome, everyone, to Whole Hog Politics. I'm Bill Sammon, joined by my old pal, Chris Stirewalt. We both work at the Hill and News Nation, but only you, Chris, are the author of Whole Hog Politics, the smart and sassy political newsletter published each week at thehill.com.
You can't say
If you didn't like that, Chris, you're not going to like this. I got to share something with you. You and I were in New York this week for an event on behalf of the Hill, and you led a wonderful political panel. But one of my colleagues in advance of that event wrote me an email in which she described you.
Oh, no.
And I would like to read that description for America right now. Quote, Chris isn't just a political guy. He's a data scientist for the American soul. And I thought, wow, that's kind of spot on, because especially in today's column, you definitely are playing data scientists for the American soul, because you get into some really interesting data about what's coming up. But before we get to that, Chris, I want to ask you about another topic, which is voter ID. Next week, Congress is going to be voting on something called the Save America Act. I love how they title this legislation.
Modest, always modest, Congress.
Which, if passed, would do two things. One, it would require states to ascertain proof of citizenship when registering voters. And two, it would require voters to show a photo ID before casting their ballots when they show up to vote in an election. I want to show you what Chuck Schumer said about this legislation. I think we have a full screen of it. He said, quote, the SAVE Act would impose Jim Crow type laws to the entire country and is dead on arrival in the Senate. It is a poison pill that will likely kill any legislation that is attached to it. The SAVE Act seeks to disenfranchise millions of American citizens, seize control of our elections, and fan the flames of election skepticism and denialism, end quote. Now, I want to show you two other elements, Chris, to tee this up for you, if you'll bear with me. We also heard from esteemed rapper Nicki Minaj, who weighed in on the voter ID imbroglio by saying, quote, what sensible, forward-thinking, cutting-edge leading nation is having a debate on whether or not there should be voter ID? Like, they're actually fighting not to have people present ID while voting for your leadership. Do you get it? Do you get it now? Lots of exclamation points and question marks. And then finally, I want to just show you that Nicki Minaj is not alone among minorities who believe that the voter ID law should be passed, because this is how CNN explained it. I think we have a soundbite of this.
Here, take a look here. Favorite photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this. Voter ID is not controversial in this country. A photo ID to vote is not controversial in this country. It is not controversial by party, and it is not controversial by race. The vast majority of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj that, in fact, you should have a photo ID to be able to vote.
So here's my question, Chris. Honest question, and I want to get at the politics of this. What is honestly the political strategy behind Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and the rest of the Democrats in Congress really kind of vehemently opposing legislation if their own party supports it? And really, I'm not being cynical. What is the upside for them to oppose it?
Well, I have a lot of grievances that I now need to seek redress for. Number one, don't ever say that about the American soul about me again. I reject that. I am but a simple country pundit. Number two, how dare you make me react to my friend Harry Enton that I'm like but a remora swimming underneath Harry's excellent analysis. I love Harry. So
No, I do too.
I think the Democrats at the beginning of the Biden administration had a piece of legislation called For the People. And it was their first act. And this was back when Democrats were really focused on democracy as an issue. And democracy as an abstract issue is not a good issue, right? It was not good for Democrats.
Yeah, we saw that in 2024.
Yeah, it was not good for Democrats. And it won't be good for Republicans as an overarching issue. Whether you liked or disliked what was in the For the People Act, the fair critique of it was that putting the federal government in charge of elections is wrong. It's unconstitutional. The Constitution is explicit that the states are in charge of elections, and some states, to put it in a larger perspective, for a long time in the United States, different states chose their officials in wildly, totally different ways, right?
Yep.
It didn't matter, because the point in the Constitution is you pick them, we'll deal with them, right? But that's a you thing, not a federal thing. So over time, we have seen the federalization and the Voting Rights Act, 1965, most significantly. But we have seen
a Democratic bill.
Well, yeah, and the civil rights, yeah. But we've seen over time the Help America Vote Act and other ways that the federal government has nosed into this authority of the states. And the way that they do it, it's sort of like, do you remember when the drinking age in America used to be different? West Virginia, I know, I missed it. But West Virginia had an 18-year-old drinking age for like 3.2 beer. For small beer, West Virginia, you could be 18.
That's
and then
the same in Ohio.
And other states would have this.
Beer,
And yeah, and that's
not that I ever tasted
not that
it.
you would ever participate. And Louisiana kept its 18-year-old drinking age, and certainly into the 1990s. The way that the federal government defeated that over time was Congress passed legislation that said, if you don't raise the drinking age in your state, we will withhold, you will no longer be eligible for federal highway funds. So they conditioned that. So it was a defeat of federalism, right? So this is vertical federalism, and it was a victory for federal power that they used the funding loophole to push down. The method that the Democrats wanted to use 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and the method the Republicans want to use now is to say, we're only in charge of congressional elections. Congress, right, can dictate the terms, the qualifications for a person who will be seated, right? So this is basically setting the rules of the House. The House can say, you have been legitimately elected, you have not been legitimately elected. And legislation like this, by changing the rules for federal races, creates that push down effect where for the states can still, I mean, there are municipalities in the country where people who are not citizens can vote in municipal elections.
Yeah.
But so this is the downward pressure. The Democrats' bad legislation at the beginning of the Biden term was even more capacious and far-reaching than this Republican bill. And at the time that they brought it forward, an elections enthusiast, said, I don't think that that's probably a good idea. I think that if you want elections to be valid, free, fair, safe, and all the things that people say they want them to be, centralizing authority in Washington is not a good idea. And I even told Democrats at the time, rerun January 6th in your mind with a central authority over elections in Washington. You don't want that. The Republicans at the time agreed, right? They were like, yeah, this is federal overreach, man. This is this is too much. And now the Republicans say, well, yeah, but the problem is simply too big. And only federal overreach will solve the problem. Chuck Schumer is being hypocritical in offering the same arguments against this legislation that he rejected.
Jim Crow 2.0.
Yeah, that he rejected in the legislation that he championed at the beginning of Joe Biden's term. Hypocrisy. Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
I was going to say his argument isn't so much that this is, federal overreach. He's arguing it along racial terms. He's saying this is going to disenfranchise Black Americans who, in his mind, would be less likely to have an ID form.
So the longstanding Democratic argument against voter identification, which Harry is quite right, is an 80-20 kind of issue or more in the United States, is that the costs associated with obtaining the valid identification are functionally a poll tax. That if it costs you something to get the identification that you need to go vote, it is functionally a poll tax. And Republicans have...
The Republicans make the argument that, like, you need an ID to go, I don't know.
Right. The airport and voting are two different things, right?
Yeah. But I mean, you need an ID for a lot more than the airport.
No.
Right?
But
you need an ID to do a lot of stuff.
Renting a car and voting are two different things. And there's it's not a preposterous idea to say that these costs. And so Republicans at various times in various places have said, here's the deal. We're going to make getting an ID card free. We're going to make it free. If you want an identification card, we're going to make it free. Now, there's a debate around this one about what kind of identification will be valid. And Republicans were like, well, a passport. Well, not that many Americans have passports. And then is it a real ID driver's license? So that's the place where the debate is taking place. I think that what Schumer and Jeffries are doing is not dissimilar to a lot of what people do in Washington, which is if no matter what the Senate Republicans put forward, the Democrats would oppose it, right? If it was free, if it was Medicare for all, but they called it Trump care, they would be like, I don't think so. You're
getting at the root of my question, which is I honestly don't understand, and because I don't really, I may be cynical, but I don't believe that Schumer is opposing this on some highfalutin constitutional grounds that this is a federal overreach, especially the Democratic Party saying this is too much of a federal overreach from Washington. I believe that I take him at his word that it is a racial concern for him, and again that's why I don't get if even Black voters in the Democratic Party overwhelmingly favor it. I just don't understand
the median Black voter is not the Congressional Black Caucus, right? The median Black voter is not Operation Rainbow Push.
Well, is the Congressional Black Caucus out of step with the median Black voter?
Well, sure. In the same way that the Freedom Caucus is out of step with the people, the mainstream of the people who they represent.
Right.
The shibboleths of how racial grievance and resentment work out in America in both directions are often way out of line with what mainstream people think and feel, because for most, let's say that voter ID is in the same category as term limits, right? It's something that's 75-25. Americans came to a consensus about, yeah, that's a good idea. When you go to do the actual legislation, and this is the problem that confronts Republicans right now. You go to do the actual legislation, and the hardliners in the Republican Party. So you have this SAVE Act, which is principally a voter ID measure. But there are Republicans who, of course, want to ban mail-in balloting, like the president. There are states, several, 5, I think, states in the United States that are basically mail-in voting states. And it works for them, right? They like mail-in voting. Washington, it makes a lot of sense for Alaska. There's a lot of merit in having mail-in voting in the United States, and with the correct safeguards, it's not any more subject to fraud than in-person voting. One of the other things that this legislation would do, the SAVE Act, as I believe, and I may be wrong, the audience can correct me. The SAVE Act, I believe, also bans sending out registration, right? So, which is some places do automatic registration, where they say, "Congratulations, we're setting your default to voter registration." Republicans don't like this. Republicans are wrong because, from a cynical political point of view, because it will help them. Their electorate, some Republicans are stuck in their old mindset where they are where high turnout hurts them. High turnout has helped Republicans in recent years because as the demographic lines have shifted and lower propensity, Republicans have become increasingly reliant on lower propensity, lower income voters.
Right.
They should want it, right? Republicans want, they should want, in the 1990s when Republicans were mad about the Help America Vote Act, they said it's just Democratic secretaries of state and Democrats in Congress trying to gin up low turnout, often Black and Hispanic urban voters. This is just them doing that. And I think the Republican Party doesn't understand that's their electorate now. Those are your voters. The people who are hard to get to the polls, those are your people now. The Democrats have the easy lifts now in the suburbs with the affluent, college-educated, higher propensity voters. It's Republicans' turn to beat the bushes and send out the vans, and they need to understand that. I will shut up just by saying the pressure inside the Republican Party is, so let's say Chuck Schumer said, you know what? If you take out the universal registration bit, let's do a deal on voter ID. If you add money into it, basically to fund free IDs for people or whatever, we'll get to a deal. We'll call it good. The House Republicans already have another bill that is called "Make Voting Great Again." I forget what they've Trump branded it. And they have this other bill, which is, as it is farther to the nationalist extreme than the Democrats' bill was to the progressive extreme at the beginning of Biden. And it's got all kinds of stuff about dictating how elections work here and how they work there. All of this goes to one idea, which is that if the Democrats win, if this legislation does not pass, even if it does pass, even if the SAVE Act is to pass, the idea that this administration will accept the legitimacy of November's results, I think is very low. I think it is very, very low. If it passes, it's still low because there's this other successor bill that comes along.
Takes away one argument.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but what about this? Well, what about that? If they wouldn't have passed this, if they had passed this, if they had done that. So these elections are corrupt, and we do not accept that. The president will not accept the legitimacy of a Democratic House or a Democratic Senate.
That's interesting. Chris, I want to ask you about Penn Station and Dulles International Airport and whether they should be renamed Trump.
Who would want their name on Penn Station? What is wrong with a person?
Before I get into this, I just want to remind our viewers, by the way, as you know, Chris, we, for the second week in a row, are broadcasting live right this moment on thehill.com. This is a live broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, not just taped, although a taped version will air later on YouTube. And, you know, if you want to, not only is it live, I mean, that would be enough. But it's also, we're going to be taking live questions, live fire questions. It's like the old C-SPAN Washington Journal that I've done a time or two. I think you have too.
I have.
So if you do have a question, anyone in the audience, if you scan that big, beautiful QR code on the screen right now, it'll take you to a link. You hit the link and you can type in your question. You can appear on camera with us. We hope you would like to appear on camera with us, class to join up a little bit, and ask your question about the topics we're discussing or anything political that you think we, especially Chris, could answer. Because when the questions get tough, I say, over to you, Chris. Mm-hmm. But Chris, let's talk about the Dulles. Basically the story is this, that emerged recently. And that is Chuck Schumer, who we were discussing in the last topic, has revealed, or apparently was told by President Trump, that he would, that Trump wanted to rename Penn Station, Penn Station, the main train station in New York City, which you and I were both in yesterday. And he also would like to name Dulles International Airport.
And who would want their name on Dulles? This hideous Dulles Airport is it America's worst large airport? It's very, very, very
Have you
terrible.
been to the Atlanta airport lately?
Well,
I know it's under construction, but God almighty.
The Atlanta airport has a exciting, chaotic, freaknik energy that when you're sprinting through the
one way of putting it,
the ill-designed Atlanta airport, and that means also you're flying Delta. So thoughts and prayers. My regrets. But Dulles is terrible. You have to take any time you are liable to be in 4 modes of transportation to complete your trip. If you will take a car in order to take a people mover, one of those tram things, subway-like tram things, and then they put you in a moon rover from Capricorn 1 and take you further to go to get on your airplane. You say, what's his name? Saarinen, the architect. Oh, did you know? And I will stop talking about this, but I always find this fascinating. My wife told me this, and she's good. She's good about these things. So Saarinen, who designed Dulles, also designed the St. Louis Arch, and he was like for mid-century epic scale architecture. He's your guy. When they built Dulles, the reason they used the dumb people movers is that at the time in the 1960s, they believed, it was broadly held, that what was going to happen was that airplanes were just going to keep getting bigger, that they were going to, like the 747 was only the beginning, right? That we were going to have these massive ships flying through the air. And so the original design of Dulles was that you would be taken directly to your plane on a little lifty up giggo that would go up to the plane, and you would, and it would be, that's how it would be. And then technology did not move in the direction that people thought, and consumer preference did not move in the way that people thought. And that's why Dulles stinks. And you know what? If I were the Democrats, I would say to Donald Trump, cool. You want your name on Dulles? You want to bump off John Foster Dulles and have your name on this airport that everybody hates? Please to enjoy. Please to enjoy.
By the way, the twist here in the story is that Trump is allegedly saying, if you do name those things after me, I will free up some federal funding. We talked earlier, just a few moments ago, about 3-2 beer and whether to, the feds would withhold federal funding depending on, to influence local laws in terms of drinking age. And here it is releasing some infrastructure money that the Democrats would very much like to have. This is money that
the president impounded, Democrats would say, illegally.
Congress appropriated it.
It's money appropriated by Congress. And during the shutdown, the president made the, I think Democrats would say, tendentious claim that because of the shutdown, they were just going to withhold this appropriated and authorized spending to finish this huge commuter project in New York City, the Gateway.
And he was also saying there was DEI contracts or something. And
it was very clearly to punish Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. Now, of course, they also punished Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican running for governor in New Jersey. The timing was unpropitious for Republican hopes there. So what the president is saying is, I will release this legally appropriated money if you eat this bug. Here's a bug. Here's a roach. If you eat this cockroach, I will reauthorize this money for you. And this way the president can say, well, I tried to give it back to them, but they just hate me so much. They hate me. They wouldn't eat the bug. They hate me so much that they wouldn't eat the bug. And for most Republicans, right? Not most, that's not fair. For a lot of Republicans, they'll love it, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah. They're so interested in seeing Chuck Schumer eat a bug that they don't care what the
Yeah.
bug is. It's the humiliation of Chuck Schumer that would delight so many Republicans. But I'm here to tell you that when you look at what the American electorate, Ross Douthat, who is one of the New York Times columnist, my American Enterprise Institute colleague, who has been one of the, he was, I would say, a proto-nationalist. He and Reihan Salam and others were part of a movement. Remember back in Tim Pawlenty days, all the way back in flannel shirts.
Oh yeah.
Then it was like
he was going to be the thing to watch.
The Sam's Club Republicans, and it's time for a working class Republicanism, and it's time for all of this stuff. And there's going to be a stronger element of government intervention, and there's going to be a stronger element of working class oomph. And that has made Ross Douthat, his interview with J.D. Vance as Exhibit A in how he has tried to decode and decipher what's going on inside the MAGA movement to conservatism more broadly. And he said this week, basically, Donald Trump has lost the country, right? He's lost him. And they slip through his fingers. And he then lays out, here's how you could get him back. And every way that Ross lays out in, here's how you would get them back. Each one is stop being weird. Stop being mean, stop being venal, just stop. Basically, act normal for a little while.
Well, let me ask you, Chris, that's such a great point, because we saw this week some interesting sort of shifts out of the president. You know, we talk about Minneapolis, and he said something about, we're going to take a softer approach to getting these illegals out. We saw the 700 ICE agents pulled out of Minneapolis.
When Tom Homan's your softer this is Tom Homan. The fact that the discussion has moved to the point that Tom Homan is now like, we're sending in the soft touch guy, and it's Tom Homan
compared to Bovino or whatever his name is.
No, yeah.
And so, but I mean, seriously, you know what happened when, and I forget, there was a couple other little data points where Trump was sort of like kind of taking a quarter step back on some things.
He let him peel off Homeland Security funding.
Yes.
That was the first significant victory in any policy way for Democrats in the second Trump term.
And my point is this, that, you know, I think Trump's first instinct is like, don't give anything to them because they're gonna, you know, you don't give them a scalp. And sure enough, you know, you saw headlines this week like surrender, Trump, Trump takes a softer tone. And so they, you know, the press, and I think a lot of Democrats just want to kind of put, you know, you can't win if you're Donald Trump. I'm not defending Donald Trump, but I'm saying this is true with any president. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you do what they don't want you to do, they attack you for not doing what they want you to do. And then if you go, oh, you know, I'll do what you want to do, and then they say, well, you surrendered, you know. So, but his second instinct, I think, is, well, you know, this is obviously hurting me, these approaches I'm taking. And I want to try to get as much done as I can for the rest of my term here. Maybe I take a little short-term hit now, do a little course correction, and maybe in a month I look kind of smart and I'm in a different place. Is there any possibility that that he deserves credit for making a couple of strategic shifts like this, or no?
No, well, look, credit for. So if we think about the first year of the Trump presidency, can he do that? I can't believe he's doing it. And look what he's getting away with: wins at the Supreme Court, wins everywhere, win. You'll win so much, you'll get tired of winning. Everybody said you can't get, not everybody, but many people said you can't get your reconciliation bill in one gulp. And they did it. They jammed it through. They got it through Congress. He got everybody. He got Tulsi Gabbard confirmed as the director of national intelligence. He got Pete Hegseth confirmed as Secretary of Defense. So this huge series of victories, which empowered the people like particularly Stephen Miller and others in the administration who take this maximalist approach. Go listen to what Stephen Miller said at Charlie Kirk's funeral, right? about what they're going to do and who they're going to crush. And I think Trump vibed with it. I think it was like, yeah, this is great. We can do anything. One of the signal quotes of the second year of Trump 2.0 is when he amazingly said to the New York Times in an interview that the only limit on his power was his morality. And it was like he was Donald Trump's always a little high on his own supply, but man, he definitely was in. The killings of these two people, and the reason that the killings of the two people in Minnesota were so significant was that they weren't MS-13 members, right? These were middle class, white people who were strongly politically different than a lot of Donald Trump supporters, but recognizable, right? So for the middle class, working class people who voted for Donald Trump in 2024, you look at Renee Good and Alex Preddy, and you know them, right? They know people like that in their lives and in their communities. And this creates this seasick moment for Republicans where after cultivating, if we think about, I talked about this on the TV show last week, where the lines cross on approval versus disapproval on Trump's handling of immigration is right about the time Kristi Noem goes down to El Salvador and does influencer style photography in front of cages of human beings in this sort of open air prison camp in El Salvador. This is right about the time that it starts to get real weird. And the lines have continued to diverge over time. I think what for the president, so the question is, does he get credit? Donald Trump gets credit for, he's a reactive player. He's a gut, like, this is what I think is working. This is what I think is good. This is what I think I'm.
That's what I mean. Like he's feeling like maybe this isn't working. Maybe I've changed my mind on things before.
In order to keep the larger project going, right? He became willing. You know my analogy about Donald Trump and the children of Israel. Only when the wrath of God is coming down does he become willing to be led. Only when things are bad enough. And is he willing to be led? And I think you have a great example of this here, where you have Tom Homan, who has to sort of go public and say about Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller. You have Tom Tillis and others talking about Stephen Miller. They don't criticize the president. What they say is you're being misled. You're being misled by these people around you. Yeah. And I think what you saw is that Trump, he can't fire Kristi Noem, because that would be giving in to the Democrats. But he can say like, we're going to unplug this app that seems to be making the phone not work. It's breaking it's making the OS glitchy, and we're going to replace it with the Tom Homan app, which of course is the better app. And if Republicans, you could say this about voting rights, you could say this about, or voter ID. You could say this about, on all of these things. If either of the parties were willing, you know how you know, for example, that Democrats are not that serious about global warming? They wouldn't go all in on nuclear power. If global warming was the threat that many in the Democratic Party say they believe it is, we would have said, bring the nuclear. We'll figure out what to do with the nuclear waste. But
because nuclear power plants emit no
no carbon
emissions. Yeah, those big cooling towers. That's water vapor that comes out of there. There's no emissions. There's zero emissions.
So that's the tell about, like, you say it will end humanity, but you're not going to do this. For Republicans, the tell on immigration is that they won't fix it, right? The submarining of the James Lankford bill, which is a little unfair to James Lankford because it wasn't just his bill, but he led the Republican side to try to do this legislation. Donald Trump torpedoed it. Nope, and why not? The question was, why shouldn't Republicans do this? And the answer was, we'll get an even better bill once we have total control of both houses. Spoiler alert, they did not. They did not
Yeah.
do it. They
Well,
haven't.
they didn't do a comprehensive fix on immigration reform, but they did fix the border, right? I mean, they
Yes,
did
but
close the border.
they revealed the lie of Joe Biden that he couldn't fix the border, right? The president just did it, right? They didn't need the extra funding. I'm sure has helped, but they didn't need they didn't need the Langford
Yeah,
bill. Joe
Biden
Biden,
kept saying, "My hands are tied
my hands
because
are tied. If
Congress
only I
hasn't,"
could do it.
and
And you know it was a lie.
Trump said, "I'm just going to do it."
And you know it was a lie because Biden changed course on a bunch of that stuff in April of 2024 when it became politically inconvenient. So my point in saying all of this stuff is the demotivator for these parties fixing core issues is the duopoly in the duopoly of a two-party system. Keeping the issue is often better than solving the issue.
And solving it. Yeah, we've seen that time and again.
Yeah.
Chris, by the way, we're getting some really good questions rolling in. And folks, if you do want to ask a question, you can please do that and submit it in the chat. And then we know who to call on. I think we may call on Kevin Clark when I after I hit you with one other topic, because Kevin has a really good question about this recent election in Texas. Chris, I want to, your column this week talks a lot. Let me just read can I just read the opening paragraph of your column? I think we have it on this full screen. It begins by this way: yes, America is divided along lines of gender, ethnicity, faith, or absence thereof, and so much more. But education is the divide that slices through the tissue and into the sinew of the republic, end quote. And what I think, and you go on to say, Chris, that even though Republicans are exulting in the fact that they've at long last become the party of the working class, which had been the domain of Democrats for so many decades, fair enough, but the working class, especially when you look at like white voters without a college degree, is actually starting to shrink as a pool as a percentage of the electorate. So, yes, as Republicans go down this road, they will have to increasingly garner a larger and larger share of this diminishing pond of fish, if you will. Because I think you had something in there in your column about when George W. Bush won in a quarter century ago, he won about half the white working class voters. I think that's the way you.
He got George W. Bush in 2004, which is the last time prior to 2024 that the Republicans had a national popular vote victory, the symbolic victory of a national popular vote. George W. Bush got about 51%.
51%, yeah.
Of the non-college white voters, who were about 51% of the electorate, right?
Yeah, right. That's right.
So he got a little more than half of what was a little more than half of the electorate. Now, if you go back to 1980 in Ronald Reagan's election, white working class. So just as a disclaimer, going to college or not going to college on an individual basis. I know a lot of people who never went to college or never finished college who are a lot richer than me and a lot more successful than me. I also know people who went to college and totally failed in their career paths. And college is not determinative. And it's worth mentioning that every time we talk about these things. But income isn't a great tool to talk about class in American politics because of the broad disparity in $150,000 in Washington, D.C. is not very much money. It does not make you rich in Washington, D.C. or New York City or a lot of places. But if you're in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, 150 grand puts you solidly into the
upper middle class.
Yeah, like the fourth quintile or something. That's good living. So if you do income, it's hard to sort. But if you do college, non-college, it's an imperfect way to say management class versus working class. Americans don't like talking about class, but it's an imperfect way to do it. In 1980, Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter, 3/4 of the American electorate were white people without college degrees. By 2004, right, it's
Yeah.
51%. By 2024, it's 40%. You see,
So it's shrinking. The pool is shrinking.
and will continue
And
to shrink.
Trump, by the way, when he won them, he had to win like 60+%.
2/3. Yeah, 66%.
Like 66%.
Yeah.
And he didn't have
rang
a
the
mandate,
he rang the bell. His share, by the way, with white working class voters in 2016 was even higher, right? He did it. The 2016 election was even more of a stovepipe. He did more with less in 2016. But the point being, we can have another hog at some time and talk about what is Hispanic and the increasing insensibility of using Hispanic as could be an ethnic descriptor, but it is not an effective or
not
useful.
A monolith.
Well, it's not a useful racial descriptor, right? Talking about Hispanic
all over the map.
The giveaway, well, and the giveaway was as soon as the Census Bureau was like, "Are you a white Hispanic?" I'm sorry, what? What's a white Hispanic? Do I feel white today? Come on, that's preposterous. But black voters, and that is a thing, right? And the descendants of slaves, that is a real thing, and it has salience, and it doesn't apply to other groups. But my point, and I promise I will stop talking, is that for non-college whites, for working class whites, their numbers are going down as a share of the electorate because of increased diversity, but not just because of increased diversity. It's because more and more people are going to college because a college degrey is
necessary for more and more jobs.
Yeah. To get
when I went to college in 1980, it was, I think you put in your column, it was like 17%, and now 17%. It's like 40% of adults over 25 have a college
and over the
degree.
over the next 2 decades,
that helps Democrats now. If they're going to if the Republicans are going to become the party of the working class and Democrats are going to be the party of the managerial class, I guess you would call it.
Yep.
Then that's a trend line that helps them. Chris, I want to get I've got some really great questions lined up. I want to get to Kevin Clark first, and then I think I want to jump to John R., who's got a question about polls that I know you're gonna like. But before I do those two questions, let me just mention quickly that Chris, as we all know, you host the Hill Sunday.
You better not ask me who's on it.
I'm not asking you who's on it. I'm just asking you, are you excited about this weekend's episode? We're at Friday now, and you must be starting to really kind of feel the vibe of Sunday's 10 a.m. show on News Nation.
Well, I see our first questioner, and I know that our first questioner is going to be excited about it because we are going to talk about the North. And one thing I know that we're going to talk about is that we're going to talk about the North Carolina Senate race. And
I also want to talk about Texas.
Well, we will. But wait, we have Michael Whatley coming on the show.
You do?
And the primary is next month. Both are substantially uncontested. Michael Whatley, the former Republican National Committee co-chairman, who is the presumptive Democratic or Republican nominee in North Carolina, who will face off with Roy Cooper. So, sir, the answer is I heard your cry for more information about the North Carolina Senate race, and we will deliver on that.
Look at this. This is responsiveness in broadcasting in real time.
The hog gets results.
Kevin, you had a question about Texas. Thanks again for joining us, and please tell us your question.
Well, there's a lot been made of the loss in Texas, and it seems to be disturbing Republicans, but part of them are saying it was turnout, and I think that tells us something. If the Republican turnout is down, that's big. But I wanted to get your analysis on this because it seems like it's a big earthquake within the national political situation.
Just to set the stage, you were talking about a race that in a district where Trump had carried by 17 points, and the Democrat who ran this week carried it by 14 points.
You don't even have to go back to Trump's performance, which would be an unfair metric, right? A presidential year, higher turnout. So this is a district that is basically Tarrant County, Texas, which is, they call them the mid cities, I think, but it's the suburban belt between Fort Worth and Dallas. So it's south side of Fort Worth. The guy who had represented it for, since the earth cooled, was a very typical looking Texas. I forget his name, but he even has a real Texas-y kind of name. But the state senator who represented, and remember that in Texas, a state Senate district is 1 million people. That's how big Texas is that this Texas state Senate district is more populous than a House district in the United States House. So the guy who represented the district got tapped to be the comptroller, and Texas has an elected comptroller. So they moved this guy, Kelly, I forget his last name, but they moved this guy. Greg Abbott tapped him to replace the guy who had been the comptroller, who got the big job to be the chancellor of the Texas A&M system. So normie Republican advances, next normie Republican advances into that job, and then he's going to run for it in November, and I assume win. That leaves a vacancy. 2 Republicans ran, and one of them is a former beauty queen, former local newscaster who became an activist in Moms for Liberty and Turning Point and a bunch of stuff, and is like a sort of a hardcore MAGA influencer online and at these sorts of gatherings. So she's like a kind of a right-coded community organizer. The other guy was the mayor of this very wealthy town in between the 2 cities, who is kind of radical on a bunch of stuff. But I'll let you guess which one of the 2 got Donald Trump's endorsement and which one of the 2 got the Dallas Morning News's endorsement. I think you can guess. So the former mayor, who has a little kook in there, loses considerably. In Texas, they do an all-in primary. Everybody goes in the pool in the first round, regardless of party, and then the top 2 advance if nobody gets over 50%, regardless of party. And the Republican turnout fell. I have it here somewhere. I was looking at it. I wrote about it this week, and the number was bananas, right? The decline in Republican turnout from November to January to the runoff was huge. And what I argued in this piece was, for Republicans, candidate quality in a good year for your party matters a lot, because it's the difference between a good year and a great year. But man, in a bad year for your party, you can't afford weird candidates. And I believe strongly that if the Republicans had nominated a boring comptroller of Texas kind of generic Republican in this district, I don't know that they would have necessarily won, but it would have been a lot harder for the Democrats, who put forward I don't want to take anything away from this Democrat. He ran a good campaign. He's works at the Lockheed plant. He's a aircraft mechanic who became the head of the state aircraft mechanics union, and he ran a good campaign and presented himself as sort of a normal person, which is helpful. But sir, your point about the decline in turnout, if for Republicans, if their coalition is a third, let's call them Nikki Haley voters, or let's call them traditional Republicans or whatever, if you alienate those voters, they will not show up to save you in the fall. And the Republicans are starting to have a coalitional problem, which is, this is the wrong time to have a coalitional problem if you're a Republican.
Thank you so much for that question, Keith. I want to jump now to John, who has a question about the polls, Chris, which I think is related to this, because I think it has to do with the midterms. Hey, John, thanks so much. Where are you at calling in from?
New York.
Oh, fantastic.
The accent is hitting. The accent is hitting. I like it.
What's your question, John?
Well, this really follows up on what you were just saying, but as you were giving us great insight into the Trump voter and the base that supports him. There have been a lot of polls lately suggesting a lot of disillusionment, particularly with the economy, but some of the other actions that have been a little, too outrageous for people to accept. How do you think they are going to try to combat that in November? Because while I can't imagine that those voters will vote Democrat, it seems like you made a good point that a lot of them just sat out Texas and may sit out the midterms.
Well, you've saved me here, sir, because I had gotten so far into the weeds. I assume I had gotten down to talking about the 1912 Republican primaries. You never know where I will end up once I start. But that is the point of the newsletter today, of the note today, which is, how's Donald Trump doing? We talked a lot about the demography and the change in college versus non-college, managerial class versus working class, Republican performance therein. So the right question is, with that share of the electorate that went 2-1 for Donald Trump in 2024, how's it going, right? So if they were 66% for him in 24, how's it going now? And the numbers are 46% on the economy, 46% overall, 43% on the economy, 38% on the economy with women, non-college white women, and 35% on tariffs. And the tariffs are supposed to be for these voters. These are the people who the tariffs are supposed to be for. On ICE, it's 40%, foreign policy, 43%, and on Greenland, it was 13%. And
this is a Harris poll you're quoting. Is that?
No, I would never quote a Harris poll. Gross.
Or what poll are you quoting? Or Marist.
This is Marist. Yeah, please. Let's keep it clean around here. My gosh. What the warning sign for Republicans is, and this is something that they have to remember. People who voted for Donald Trump, working class people who voted for Donald Trump, did not become Republicans necessarily. They chose Donald Trump. The lower party allegiance is very key to how Donald Trump was able to win. That these are lower propensity voters and more loosely attached to the parties. That made them vulnerable to Trump's entreaties in 2016 and 2024. But it also means that they may just stay home, right? It doesn't mean that they're going to say, I'm joining the resistance and I am going out to vote with the Democrats here. It may just mean that they say, you will not convince me. And if you think of yourself as somebody who is a working class, especially woman, Donald Trump won with these folks pretty substantially in 2024, and you have children, you have a job, you have a life, and somebody says, okay, now it's essential that you go and vote in this congressional race for Mike Lawler. You must go vote for Mike Lawler in the Hudson Valley of New York. You might say, I don't care. I don't care. I don't like what's going on. And if you guys get a whooping, it won't bother me that much. And the problem for the new Republican coalition, and this is why your question is so good, the problem for the new Republican coalition is the same one that Democrats used to struggle with. Lower propensity voters don't turn out. Every 4 years, the quadrennial presidential election, the electorate is about a third bigger than it is in a midterm year. Who's the third that goes away? Those are the least engaged, least attached voters. Those are the people who feel the least allegiance. And for Democrats, they have the advantage on this side now because the more education you have, certainly the richer you are, the more likely you are to vote. And that's back to the beginning on Republicans with voter registration complaints. High turnout should help. If you're a Republican, you should want easier voting, more turning out, because right now you have the working class. All right, I'm stopping. I'll stop.
Thank you so much for that, John. Chris, we're out of time, unfortunately. What a great conversation. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. Again, I'm Bill Sammon, joined by my old pal, Chris Stirewalt. We will see you next time on another exciting edition of Whole Hog Politics.